have council person Valerie Leary, councilperson Suzanne Souter, councilperson Russ Smith. Also, we have our city administrator, Bill Barthel, our chief of police, Rick McCabe, our city solicitor, Dan Lasco, our building official, Jeff Bergstrom, and excuse me, Michael Platt. I missed you there. Also councilperson Michael Platt, and also our secretary, Kim Bergmuller, and also our city treasurer, who is Janet Carlin, and our city clerk, Brian Whitaker, in addition to our stenographer, Kathy Burke. So we have a group of people here. We're going to have some special guests this evening, and we're going to ask them to speak, and then we'll go along with the rest of the agenda. I want to welcome everyone to the holiday season, wish everyone Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, and hope you enjoy very safe and enjoyable holidays this year and these tough times. At this point, I want to welcome Senator Poore and thank her for joining us. And also the mayor just joined us, there's Mike Carana. And ask her if she'd like to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's getting ready for the holidays, but they are safe and at home. I will start by saying it's very nice to see everyone, and please forgive my my voice, and I probably will cough through this. Unfortunately, I am a recipient right now of the COVID virus. Both my husband and I have tested positive as of last week. What I will be clear in sharing is that our circle is pretty small. So it is something that we're trying to figure out of how I was able to contract it, and also my husband. So luckily our kids are negative, and but I just want to make sure to stress to everyone that the virus is tough. This is day 7, and I don't think I look so bad on day 7. However, day 1 through 7 has been pretty tough. So wear your masks, keep your circles small, and keep safe distancing. So Linda, thank you so much for allowing me to attend tonight. Again, it's always great to see everyone. And with COVID, we've certainly been under under the water with and in uncharted territories with COVID, trying to make sure that folks are getting help from all different ranges, whether it's from unemployment to housing, to getting foods to their home, making sure that they're getting the medical care that they need. And all of it takes a lot of resources, not only for myself, but also from Representative Brown, who has been a great partner in making sure that our seniors and those that are struggling get exactly what they need. I won't go in through a lot of details, but I am curious to know, maybe even just with a show of hands, how many people know how to get the information on COVID? Good. So you know to make sure to keep checking. Our hospitalizations have reached an all-time high today, higher than where we were in the spring. So there is, a lot to be said for what we did back in March. And while it's not popular to put restrictions on anyone, it did keep us safer than where we are today. So please utilize those restrictions. I won't go again all through all the different details, but for everyone sitting on this call, I do want to talk a little bit about the assistance to individuals that are impacted by the pandemic. So when we're talking about housing, we do have some plans that are available, and it is for renters who are affected by COVID to receive up to $8,000 in financial assistance. While it impacts homeowners, can also apply for up to $10,000 in coverage. So if you're talking to anyone and you find that they're in trouble when it comes to this, please make sure that you share this information. Everybody knows I post everything I possibly can on social media. So if you're not linked to me, feel free to link to me. Recapping this past year in 2021, we did not do a tremendous amount of legislation. Anything related to legislation really factored back to COVID. And I believe, along with a lot of my colleagues, that in order to be able to have clear and concise legislation through, but also the public opinion is that you need to have successful committee meetings. You need to make sure that you're vetting some of these policies. So it was safer for us to stick with COVID legislation to make sure that we could help our constituents. But we did finish out the year. And in your particular area for grant and aid, the fire companies, as an example, Goodwill received 46,000, Wilmington Manor received 58,000, Newcastle Senior Center received 161,000, Newcastle Separation Day received 35,000, and the Historical Society received 15,000. So we still kept up with our obligations in helping each one of these nonprofits continue forward. In the surrounding area, there's been quite a few constituents that have had, whether it be water issues and or needing us, either myself, Representative Cook, Representative Brown, myself. I know the mayor has been also very helpful in helping us, as well as, sorry, I start to cough, so I apologize. But also helped us with bringing the conservation group out. We're going to be helping a family member who has had some major difficulties in Washington Park with water. That's been well underway, and hopefully by the springtime that will be cleared up. We've also had some folks from Washington Park contact me in particular in regards to trying to get in and out of the neighborhood because of the amount of traffic. And again, there's a ton of detail that I can go into, but I'll hold back on some of it in regards to some of the data that I've had pulled for the 141, 273 Frenchtown Road and Washington Street. But we will be moving forward with some more safety studies to make sure that people can get in and out of our town effectively, safely, and without any issues. So that's a pretty quick high level, and don't want to keep everyone on all this stuff, but I'm happy to open it up and answer any questions.
And Senator Pruning, I want to thank you for your efforts regarding transportation. We're just starting a transportation update, working with Will Mapco and Del Dot. And so that is very important information, because traffic is one of the big things we all hear about, and there's certainly very much a quality of life issue. So thank you for that. And so at this point, if someone wants to ask the senator a question, you could raise your hand virtually, or you can do it on your phone by hitting *9. So is anyone have a question for the senator?
Hi, Mike. Mr. Mayor.
Senator, how are you?
I'm well.
Senator Brenda Vaccaro. Anyway, I hope you feel better. Best to you and Billy and the kids. Sorry to hear about all that, but I know you'll get through it. So best to all of you. You know what prompted, and you touched on this a little bit, but if there's anything else you can add, what prompted the call that you and I had the other day, which led to this, are there any must-pass, other than the obvious, like a budget and stuff like that, but are there any other cyclical things that are must-pass or high priorities that would impact the city? You know, whether it's you touched on a few, whether it's municipal street aid, transportation funding. Again, these are kind of budget things, but are there any other kinds of things that would be at risk that would be of interest to the city budget?
Yeah, so right now, what I will say to you, excuse me, is that DFAC numbers have come back, and I'm sure everybody knows what that is. It's a group of folks that basically analyze our revenue standings in the state of Delaware, and then project where they think we will fall. And as of right now, we are on a good trajectory, not perfect. Where we may see difficulty is in the following year. So, but as of right now, we're on track, and we're going to stick on track. There are initiatives that obviously senators and representatives will put out, but related to COVID, of course. Not only related to COVID, but we did just finalize a lawsuit with the school systems. And so there's a projected plan for the next 4 years There's some pretty heavy price tags on some of the things that need to be accomplished. And so we are constantly in conversation about what that looks like. Mike, I shared with you, and I believe you're in receipt of an email. I've been working with an organization that we are 1 out of 6 in the United States, 1 out of 6 that has this old form of funding in our school systems. And so it's called unit-based funding. And most of the states usually use something along the lines of a weighted system. And so that's something that I think we need to have more of a conversation about. And we do have the partnership with the Reading Consortium out of Wilmington, who is also working on ways for us to help modify our education system and make sure that, the two main important things in the state of Delaware, it is our children, our students, and our economy. And we can't incentivize or entice companies to come to Delaware without having good talent. And you grow good talent through your education system. And we are lacking in the manufacturing industries. And so we are, leaning on our incorporated areas. We're leaning on other areas such as the port. And so we need to make sure that we continue to grow, not just in the world of higher education, but also in our skills trades.
Thank you, Nicole. Last question real quick. Memorial Day was tough in Wilmington, Dover, and a few other places. And we're having a conversation about race and culture and policing. And there was some discussion about whether or not the General Assembly would take up police reform, et cetera. And since we have a police department of 18, any thoughts that, where do you think all that'll fall out with the next General Assembly?
Yeah, so I think we will see some reforms. We have task forces that have been put together. I know Representative Cook is actually chairing one of them. And I hear that it is going very well. The conversations are there. I think that, we have had a tough 2020. I don't want to say that it can get any worse because we still have how many days left. But I am hopeful that we have a renewed faith and effort from each and every one of us to bring some unity, no matter what side of the aisle that you sit on. I believe that we are a strong nation, but we're also strong individuals. And the town I grew up in, right, Newcastle, we all took care of each other. And it didn't matter what side of the tracks you came from. It didn't matter where you lived, how big your house was, or how many people lived in your house. And so I am looking forward for us to going back to that. And, Chief McCabe, I know you do an outstanding job, and I know your job is not ever easy. And so, doing it with integrity and delivering to our folks what they need is most important. So we just need to continue to work together. But I do believe that we will see some reforms, and it's needed in and not that I'm that old, just so we're clear. However, graduating a long time ago and having a degree in criminal justice, one of the first things that I ever learned was, being a police officer meant being a peace officer to the community and bringing peace within. So, I know everybody's doing the best that they can, and I'm sure that they will rise to the top in the challenges ahead of them.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I think we have one question from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I have Mr. Phil Gross. I'm going to let him in. Hold on.
Sure. My apologies.
Oh, no, so our thoughts are with you and your family. I'm just glad you're able to join us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, good evening. Sorry to hear about your not doing too well, but at your worst, I always think you're doing better than most. So thank you for taking the time to join us. It's always a pleasure. The only thing I had a question was, could you repeat the allotment of the funds to the senior center, the fire company that you gave in the beginning?
Sure, absolutely. And I just rounded. So bear with me, Phil. About 46,000 to Goodwill,
Mhm.
58,000 to Wilmington Manor, Newcastle Senior Center, which is a vital part of our community, and especially during this pandemic. Our seniors are struggling. They want the interaction just as much as our kids do, and so our senior center received 161,000.
Mhm. Okay, so Senior Center 161, Goodwill 46, and then
Nicole, you omitted Separation Day.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if Phil wanted that as well. Sorry. Separation Day is 35,000 and the Historical Society 15,000.
oh, okay, Historical 15. Okay, I appreciate it, and please take care of yourself. We need you.
And thank you very much again for joining us, and stay home and stay safe, and everybody get well.
Yes, thank you so much. I am going to log off. I hope no one minds for this evening. I promise I will see you again next month. And if anybody needs me, please do not hesitate. My number is out there, my email's out there, and I'm happy to help any way I can.
Thanks for everything you do for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Linda. Talk to you soon.
Night. Next, we have another special guest, and I'm going to ask Russ Smith to introduce our new National Park Superintendent.
Thank you. When I came aboard as superintendent of Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania National Military Park, within a week, Hurricane Isabel tore through the park and through the town. And I thought that was probably the rudest welcome a superintendent ever had. And that is till, I saw the welcome Cinda Wahlbuscer got with the whole situation that happened to her as she came on as superintendent earlier this year. Cinda came to us from the regional office and had a lot of experience with various parks. When I was in the regional office, we dealt with 75 different areas. I don't know how much that has changed, but I'm sure that's given her a broad range of experience. And it's really well past time to welcome her to Newcastle. And so I'd like to welcome Cinda Wahlbuscer, Superintendent of First State National Historical Park.
Thanks, Russ. I will say it's been a very interesting first year. So, I still think of myself as new, but really am going on a year, though it doesn't feel like a year, as a lot of it has not been spent the way I would have thought it would have been. So thank you, Russ. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me. It's great to meet you, even if it is virtually. I had hoped to have met all of you in person by this point, as well as many others that I unfortunately haven't. But again, I've been at the park for about a year, came at the end of January, so just shy of a year. As Russ said, came from the regional office and actually had kind of some connections to First State since even before I was with the Park Service. Came from the nonprofit world before the Park Service, and was involved at that point a bit from that vantage point, as kind of, it was just a thought that First State would be a national park. So while I'm new to actually being fully immersed in the park, not fully new to the park and the great resources it has. So it's wonderful to be here, and I can't wait to be at the park in a kind of a more normal era. But I thought Russ had asked if I just give kind of a brief update, and so I will highlight a few things and then certainly answer any questions any of you have. But while it has been a year of challenges, we also have a lot of really good things going on, and a lot of things that have been able to continue on the path they were on, despite COVID. So I think the Sheriff's House project is probably at the top of the list of things you all are interested in hearing about. And I'm really pleased to say that we didn't lose much in the way of time with COVID. The project's still moving forward, still on track. That's quite exciting. The last update I received as far as when it would actually be completed was that we were still looking at the end of calendar year 2022. So we're just about 2 years away. We did begin some work within the structure, the first kind of real physical work inside the sheriff's house last month. And that was asbestos abatement, and then also the archaeology in the basement. So that was kind of the kickoff. We're in there and starting work. Another piece of that project that Russ has been so involved with and really so helpful with is the exhibit piece. So the first floor will be the welcome center for the park, the entire park. And we, over the course of the last year, have had a number of meetings with partners and stakeholders, and Russ joining us for those to look at the exhibits and develop the exhibits. And really must say that those meetings and all of those partners and stakeholders have brought an unbelievable amount of expertise and assistance and advice on those exhibits. And as a consequence, they're really, I think, looking wonderful. And we're kind of rounding the final corner on getting those finalized. So that's kind of another piece. We have the construction piece and then also the exhibits piece. So a great thank you to Russ and to all the others that were involved and gave a lot of time to that. Kind of shifting from the sheriff's house, and figured I'd just give a round through the updates and then take questions. Another thing that I thought might be of interest is that we are starting the process. We're kicking off a comprehensive sign plan. And so what that is it's a project to develop a plan for the signage for the entire park. So all of our sites. So those signs would range from wayfinding signs to highway signs to the signs that reside throughout the park service owned portions of the park. So the Brandywine Valley unit in particular. So again, just in the beginning of that, it's fully funded, had our kind of beginning meetings to get together a statement of work. And as we move through that process, it's going to be really critical to engage members of the local communities at all of the park sites to look at what is existing as far as signs and to talk through and get advice and thoughts on what we would propose potentially as additional signs or changes to any signage. So that's going to be something that we're going to really need that local opinion and ear on. And that again is over the next year that should be taking place. And then finally, we are looking at the park is beginning in the middle of a strategic planning process where we're looking at park operations over the next 3 years. Kind of finding the time with me coming on board, quite frankly, with COVID being a kind of pause for certain things, that it was a good time to really think strategically, think about where we're going operations wise. And with knowing that the park is moving into a new phase of development, we're going to have a park welcome center, and we're going to have, a dedicated set of park offices in Newcastle. So all of those came together that it was the right time to think through the next 3 years and not going further than that, knowing that so much is unknown and we're still a new park with lots of developing to do. So we're really focusing on the next 3 years with that. And those are the updates I came with, but I'm happy to answer any other questions. I wanted to kind of focus on the things that I thought were probably of most interest to all of you, but here for any questions at all that any of you might have.
This is Council President Ratchford. I just want to thank you for getting our visitor center set up in Newcastle. We're all very excited about that and think that will be a great addition to our city.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. It's a fun process, and it's going to be just phenomenal to have that and get down to the nitty gritty of working with the partners and local community to figure out how we're going to run the visitor center and staff the visitor center and find volunteers to help us in the visitor center. So I think it's going to be fun and exciting, and I look forward to it.
Well, thank you very much. Anything else you want to say, Russ?
No, I certainly look forward to the opening of the visitor center, and it's been interesting so far. And I'm sure Cinda will plot out a constructive 3 years for the park.
So, well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us this evening. We appreciate it and look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Of course, and anytime, and reach out if any of you need anything. And I look forward to meeting you all in person sometime soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cinda. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Our next guest is, we have Debbie Field from KCI, and I think also some members of the Planning Commission. Is that correct? She's going to give us a summary of where we are, and then we're going to go into the agenda items associated with Ordinance 528 regarding adoption of the plan. So I'm going to, and I think there's some slides. Mr. Baldini, I believe, is with us. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the Planning Commission and also to KCI and the staff that supported you. You've done really a wonderful job. So we're really glad to be at this point where we can approve subject to certification by the governor.
Thank
Debbie?
you. Can you see the large screen with the titled lock? Do you
Yes.
see it? Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm on the slides. Thank you very much, the mayor, council, the staff and affiliates attending tonight. This is our the final, the end game for us today on the project, depending on the outcome of your vote. So I've briefly a couple slides to go over from the final comprehensive plan presentation. Before I get into that, I do want to introduce David Baldini. I can't see if he's on or not, but he's been very vital and an integral part of this project because we switched planning commission members when I was in this project as well. And David has been vital weekends and nights and early mornings, and his communication style with me has been phenomenal to get through the project. So I do want to give a great shout out to him and his availability. We've had a lot of fun doing it together, and we've grown pretty well together. So as you know, we had 4 steps in the project scope. We've been through all of the steps. I'm going to go into a little bit more in the next slide, but you've seen this before. All of our project scope steps are completed now. And just to give kind of an overall on the participation for any public that's just tuning in today or new commissioners or council, we did a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. A great community survey was completed. The Planning Commission held and hosted 3 public workshops in neighborhood areas. There was 20 public meetings for the comprehensive plan. And then the draft plan review, there was ample time, especially in COVID. We all had to regroup. Normally we go and walk and talk and go to the library, the senior center, etc. We had to take electronic comments, which made it challenging, but everybody was very much into participation in this plan. So another, for the draft plan input, that was overwhelming for the city. I feel it was really good input that we received. The city planning commissioners had input, the city staff, the city council, and the community as well. Newcastle County, the city engineer was phenomenal in getting us background detailed information. Municipal Services Commission, for the first time in a comprehensive plan, really went into their goals and their vital part of your growth, their vital part of redevelopment. So it was great to know what they were doing. And there's a big shout out to the state of Delaware. All the state agencies, of course, gave really good comments, especially from DENREC and coastal climate area. But more than anyone was Office of State Planning Coordination. They've always been really good in the process and very helpful. So Connie Holland and her team with Trish was really good and instrumental in getting us through this process with the comments and very supportive of our timeline. So we received all the comments, they were presented, all comments were presented for consideration. We did not eliminate any. And the majority of the comments were included that were pertaining to the comprehensive plan. We also included several recommendations, and they actually increased the value. So when a consultant or somebody that doesn't live in your municipality writes a plan, the local knowledge, the local information increases the value of the plan because it's your plan now. It's a living document. So we received state approval on December 2nd from Office of State Planning. The next step is to insert this letter into the plan and have the commissioners or council tonight vote if they are in favor of adopting the plan. We would then take the signed ordinance and put it into the plan, and we are done. So we did receive full state approval to move forward, contingent upon the governor's certification, which is the last step. And once again, I do have to thank the city of Newcastle, the staff, the attorney, engineer, planning commission, council. It does take a village. It takes everybody's input to complete. Newcastle County, the State Municipal Service Commission. And once again, something new we did was the Newcastle community itself and the organizations. All of the organizations were interviewed or put into this plan. Their goals are some of the same exact goals as the city, and everybody's been working together. So this was a great document to include. And it was the first document that we included organizations in for a comp plan. So we received several compliments from the state on that endeavor. So tonight we have the second read potential adoption contingent upon the governor's certification. We would like to give the final deliverable. And our final deliverable product, we give you all of the raw information, all the background, all the originals. So if you have an amendment, you have anything else that needs to be done or an update, you have our document and can modify it. You own the products and all the mapping. We will also be sharing that with your city engineer so they can build upon the maps in their future projects as well. And then in January, once we get the governor's certification, if that happens in January, we will then forward that document to all the county and state notifications. There's one I'd like to say is I'm open up for questions, but I've really enjoyed working for the city of Newcastle in my previous employer and in this project as well. And I just want to say that I'm hoping I'm giving Bill Barthel a really good holiday present today before Christmas. And I'm open for questions, and it's been a very enjoyable process.
Mr. Baldini, would you like to say something?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you. I'd like to say thank you to KCI and Debbie for all the work they've done. I'd like to say thank you to the city, Bill and Jeff and Kim for the tremendous amount of help they gave us along the way. The Planning Commission as a crew worked hard, plus some members that used to be on the Planning Committee who have moved to other functions within the city. I'd like to say thanks to them because they were instrumental in the early game. Will Mapco was tremendous in helping us with surveys. I mean, the list goes on and on. It was a total team effort by a lot of different agencies, people, groups. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of fun. And I think it's a good baseline document to build the future. So all of that said, I think if you pass this, I will say thank you one more time because it's now on your table, not mine. And I would appreciate it.
Me too.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for all the hard work. And I think it's a really well-written plan, very detailed, and it's our job moving forward as a city to work with the Planning Commission and to implement these action steps and make our city even better. So at this point, I'd ask Ms. Field and Mr. Baldini to stay with us while we're going to go immediately to two steps in the process. First, there's a second reading of Ordinance 528, and I'm going to ask for a motion to dispense with the second reading. Do I have a motion for one of the council?
So be it.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Pratt. A second?
So second.
Second from Ms. Leary. And all those in favor of dispensing with the second reading of Ordinance 528 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then we're going to move on to motion, discussion, and vote on Ordinance 528. May I have a motion to consider approval of Ordinance 528 contingent upon certification from the governor?
So
So
moved.
be it.
That was a motion from Ms. Leary and a second from Mr. Platt. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so at this point, any further discussion? Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask for a vote. We've had plenty of meetings on this particular topic and lots of discussion. So all those in favor of ordinance 528 indicate by saying aye.
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 Nay. Okay, the ordinance has passed unanimously. And thanks again for Ms. Field and Mr. Baldini.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Claps.
Yay.
Yay, it's a huge thing. All right, we're gonna go to our next guest. We have the Tree Advisory Commission is here. And I'm going to ask their leader, John Antonia, to introduce himself and the members. And they're here to give us a presentation and any council discussion from that. So Mr. Antonio.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
The following is the first of what will be an annual report from the TAC. This year has been a productive and eventful year. In addition to myself and Tom Maddox, three new members, Sheila Shannon, Judy Baldini, and Scott Savage were added to our committee. Ron Vuklich was also brought on as an advisor. The committee has met regularly each month and has had a full agenda. Since January, members have processed several tree removal and tree pruning applications. The large part of the requests involved problems with sycamores, elms, oaks, and maples planted several decades ago that are now diseased or are so large that the city sidewalks cannot safely accommodate them. Since the primary goal is to save as many older trees as possible, the committee has carefully considered each request as to the information presented by the homeowner or neighbor and with a visit to the site by each committee member. Our accomplishments. We have shared our advice and possible solutions with residents of the larger community who have had problems with the spotted lanternfly, anthracnosis of sycamores and maples, and damage to their brick sidewalks. We have received a grant of $2,000 from NCCP to buy and plant trees. We have received $800 in donations from residents through NCCP to buy and plant trees. In October, we planted 18 sidewalk trees in partnership with Ron Vuklich. We organized a volunteer group to prune city-owned crepe myrtles. And we have 2 articles written about TAC's tree planting efforts. TAC has also prepared an updated list of 10 trees for use on city sidewalks. The trees on the list have a height of 25 to 30 feet and a width of 16 to 18 feet at maturity. Trees that were included on the list are less likely to uplift bricks, curbs, and pavement, less likely to damage sewer lines, less likely to grow into or above power lines, less likely to lose large branches in a storm, less likely to drop sap or debris on vehicles. This relieves the city of considerable expense to hire outside vendors to remove large trees. Trees on this list can be removed or pruned when necessary by city personnel. This also relieves MSC of the responsibility of trimming branches out of power lines. And ultimately, the best thing, limits threat to life and property. TAC is also on the tree board for City USA. As a member of this organization, we uphold their recommendations of advocating for the right tree in the right place, teaming up with organizations or businesses in the city or state, making policy for tree care and planting, having a tree planting day, organizing a community Arbor Day event, which is the first Friday in April. To these points, we have, with our selection of the 10 suitable trees for city sidewalks, acted as advocates for the right tree in the right place. We have teamed up with NCCP as a sister organization and teamed at the state level with the DFS, the Delaware Forestry Service. We set policy for proper tree planting by using a tree planting team that is headed by 2 former nursery owners and 2 assistants who have planted hundreds of trees. And we practice the policy by having a trained certified arborist prune in late February the over 150 trees that have been planted on city sidewalks over the last 5 years. going forward, our future plans, we'd like to work on a gateway project. We have started in a small way, a project that we would like to work on with the council in the city. Not too many years ago, some of us remember Delaware Street as having a tree canopy that welcomed residents and visitors to the city. More recently, many of those trees have been removed, leaving vast stretches without a treescape. To again provide a canopy for Delaware Street and gateway to the city, we have started planting trees between 5th and 6th Street. Planting trees in the areas that have no trees from Ferry Cutoff to the pier is a more ambitious goal, but essential to enhance the work already completed by the city along that gateway. We ask council and the city to join us in this effort by providing TAC with a generous tree planting budget in the spring of 2021. We would be pleased to return to talk more specifically about how this may be done and what kinds of trees we see as being part of the enhancement. Finally, we're applying for a $5,000 grant from DFS. Tom and Ron met with Keisha Broskill and Taryn Davidson from the service in August to see the sidewalk tree plantings from the last 5 years. And Taryn has encouraged us to apply for this grant, thinking we may have a shot at it. So that's about our summary for the past year and what we're working on.
Questions from Mayor or Council for Mr. Antonio? Comments?
Council President, I'm just so glad that John is here and reports on all the great things the Tree Commission is doing. The trees are part of the heart and soul of Newcastle. And it sounds like they've got a very active program going now. So that's very, very enlightening and very encouraging that that's happening right now. I would like to know, John, how do you intend to make that list of 10 trees available to residents?
Well, we maybe need to speak with the city to see where we should post that or where it should be available. I don't know.
One idea would be to put it in the newsletter that goes out with the MSC bill.
Okay.
Each month, because everybody gets one of them.
That's a great idea, and then semi-related, right, with tree issues. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kim could set that up for you.
Okay, I can handle that. No problem.
The
I
mayor has
look forward to the growth of all the trees.
the mayor has a comment.
John, thank you very much for all of your work. Thanks for digging into all this. Real quick, I know you don't, perhaps we don't have time to go into it tonight, but just in 5 to 10 seconds, what's the high top line summary in terms of the budget you'd be looking for next year for tree purchases?
Well, we haven't discussed that in depth yet, but we threw out a number of 20,000 just as a starting point or a discussion. We could get a lot of trees with that.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
I certainly want to thank the Tree Commission and all the hard work that they're doing in working with partnerships and with their consultant, Ron Dukalich. You're very active, and that's so important. All of us really care about the tree canopy. We did double your budget last month, but I know that there are more needs in terms of trees. And so we look forward to hearing back from you on your recommendations. And thank you very much for your hard work and for coming to speak with us this evening.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, John.
Okay, next we're going to go back to our regular agenda. And so that will start with the approval of the minutes, the November 4, 2020 public hearing minutes, the November 4, 2020 special meeting minutes, and the November 10th regular meeting minutes. Are there any comments on these meeting minutes? Okay, do you have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
from Ms. Leary and seconded by Mr. Smith. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. At this point, I would ask our treasurer, Janet Carlin, to give us a report. Ms. Carlin?
You're muted, Janet.
He's muted.
There we go. I unmuted myself 3 times now. Hi, everybody. This is the unaudited report, treasurer's report as of November 30th, 2020. Total unrestricted funds, $3,870,970.48. Total restricted funds, $2,361,798.97. Total cash in the account, $6,232,769.45. I do want to mention that after our last budget meeting and our adjustments to the budget, we are exactly where we should be as we were last year at this time. 62% of the revenues to the budget. So, and we're 5 months into this project, and I think we've done an excellent job of monitoring the monies, and we're doing well. We're doing well for this terrible year. I thank you very much.
Any questions for Ms. Carlin?
Ms. Baxter, not a question, but one thing I was tasked with was finding out what the Historical Society would like to be granted. When will we have that discussion regarding the budget, a further discussion on the half-year budget?
We'll put it on the January meeting.
Okay.
I got a question on building repairs. It jumped up quite a bit. We budgeted 3,500. It's 11,945. Did something happen?
That might have, Mr. Platt, Bill Barthel, that might have, I believe that was COVID expense.
Okay, that's kind of figured that.
Right, we modified the, which I think I reported last month, that we were modifying the HVA systems. I believe that's what that is, but I can confirm that for you.
No need. I just didn't realize that. I didn't know if the COVID funds were being budgeted differently from our regular budget. That's all.
Well, the COVID funds are being, we're paying for them out of the money that we get from the CARES Act, but we budget the expense to the bill, to the line item that it would be expensed under normally.
Just to justify.
But then
Okay.
it's right, but then it's offset by the money we get from the CARES Act.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, at this point, do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report unaudited as presented?
Second.
Mr. Platt, and a second from Ms. Leary. All those in favor indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the treasurer's report has been approved unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Carlin.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're going to have reports from the city administrator and staff.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I really don't have anything for council unless you have some questions for me. And if you don't, then I'm basically going to ask Jeff to discuss a little bit. We do have a little bit more work that needs to be done on Delaware Street prior to the spring. So unless, as I said, unless you have questions for me, I'll just ask Jeff to explain the scope of that work, and how it's getting done.
Okay, Mr. Bergstrom.
Yes, what we're proposing to do, since we delayed the paving, is to temporarily patch the concrete between the reset curbs and the existing pavement just for the winter. The contractor has generously donated his services for this effort, so it's not going to be done at taxpayer expense. We're just merely going to clean the area involved with our vac truck, and then help them with the posting and notification of property owners. Also, MSC is going to be pulling poles out this winter, and I believe that'll just be a minor repair that the city is involved with. Other than that, Dobbinsville paving is coming up. As soon as there's a break in the regular paving season, I think for a contractor, I'm hoping in the next week or two. Let's see what happens. I'm certainly it's going to be done before we meet again.
Thank you.
Jeff, Michael Platt here. How cold can it be until they stop paving?
Actually, there's a 6-inch dip. If you're talking about the repairs, the pothole repairs in Dobbinsville, that's a 6-inch deep lift. So they can mill that out and pave it in any weather condition that Delaware's ever seen. If it's snowing or raining, they can put a 6-inch lift in to patch these potholes. It's not a wear layer. When you're trying to put a thin wear layer on something, you've got to have the base warm. But this we'll be milling right down to dirt, down below the dirt that's there, and it'll go on anytime. So like every contractor, they're scrambling for some non-rainy days. This has been an abysmal paving season. It's just been bad weather, too much bad weather, too many personnel concerns. But we'll get this done rather shortly, I believe.
Thank you.
You're muted. Linda, you're muted.
Thank you. Are there any other potholes that need to be paved while the contractor's out there around the city just before winter?
I had one complaint on, what was it, 8th Street, I think. 8th and South, there was a pretty good size one.
I think that was addressed.
Okay, I mean, so I just haven't been out there in a little bit, so.
Sure, no, I
I
understand.
imagine that was it.
Right.
Right. We got a little bit of work on School Street also, but it's just we're not going to be able to pave 9th Street this paving season between School and Young. That's going to get rebuilt after the construction is finished, but it's just finishing up now. So that'll wait for the next paving season.
Give me half a minute. I'll walk out the door and check on the both of those real quick.
Okay.
No comment.
All right. Anything else for the city administrator or Jeff?
Okay, and if not, Madam President, then I'll ask the chief. Chief, if you've got anything you'd like to discuss with council.
Yes, thank you. And I should be brief, I think. To start off, if you look at the report, it looks like our quality of life calls have dropped again this month, which is a good sign. But I will say that I know last month we discussed briefly about a shooting that we were investigating. You'll look in there that it says it's pending active. That should be cleared soon. We have a warrant for the defendant, so we'll be making an arrest in that. That's the one in Penn Valley. It was a domestic related incident. Nobody was hit, but still dangerous enough. Our Christmas party, as we've talked about before, is not happening, but we're going to continue with a tradition that we did a couple years ago called the Blue Light Christmas. We've solicited for some families that are in need. I think we have 3 already. I think talking to Captain Shugart earlier today, she mentioned that, forgive me, I'm sure that was loud, that we probably have room for 1 more family. So again, if anybody has any ideas, she would be the point of contact there. And then the goal would be during the week of maybe the 21st, responding to the residents with with the presence that we have with the fire department and the police department, and then of course any council members that would like to join us. As soon as we get closer to that, we'll certainly be able to put the details out, and I hope to have some details out by the end of this week. We're also going to obviously push this on our Facebook page. Another issue I did want to address briefly is this. I may have one more report that looks like this in the future. That it's going to change. The appearance of this report is going to change in some of the content. Some of the things that we're going to address are actually some of the items that are some of the hot topics with some of the task force with reform. These are things that many of us were doing anyway. We've been compiling data, just looking at different ways that we can present it. And I'm going to present it in a handful of different ways. I'm going to present an annual report to council, hopefully in the January meeting, to summarize the 2020 year. I hope to have it done by the January council meeting. If not, it would certainly be ready by the February council meeting. You know, we obviously have to wait for the end of the year and all the data to come in. Some of the things that are going to be covered in this report are all the outreach projects that we've participated in. 2020 was not the best for outreach projects because of the COVID, but we still managed to get a few in. We're gonna discuss some demographic information, response time information. So it'll be a little bit more comprehensive than we're typically used to. So we'll probably see one more report like this that summarizes December of 2020, and then at some point we'll get the annual report. I also plan to publish the annual report on our new website that we launched about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That will stay up there for a while so residents can look at it. And I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Suzanne Souter, Chief, just one question. I know this has been covered before, but just to remind everyone, I believe you're accepting contributions for the Christmas Family Project? And those
We have been.
In Shugart?
Yeah, that's correct. We have been. I think we have what we need. I think now we need another family. Yeah. Folks have been
Thanks.
consistently generous. Yep.
What size family would you, Councilman, what size family would you be looking for?
There's no there's no restriction with the size. You know, we're looking for kids that need. So
okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We
Thank you.
appreciate everything that you do for the city. So we're going to move on to the council communications. Any council member would like to share some information?
I just want to wish everybody happy holidays and hope everybody stays safe and warm and spend some time with your families and enjoy them.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll go to business from the mayor.
Great, very much. Thank you very much, Council President. I sent each of you a copy of my remarks, so I'll just summarize in the interest of time. So again, let me echo what Councilman Platt just said, and that's wish everybody a happy holiday. Whatever you do observe, I wish you the very best. You, your family, your friends, everybody be safe. Obviously, as we heard from Senator Poor, and as you've heard in the media, the COVID-19 numbers are not good. I had a meeting this morning with the governor and Janice Nevin, Dr. Nevin, who's the CEO of Christiana Care. And as the senator pointed out, the numbers there are pretty substantial. They're in the 300s and the admissions are going up. They're not at capacity. They are struggling at Bay Health down in Kent County. The numbers so far are pretty steady and not, they seem to be lagging a bit behind down at BB at the beach. But they're going up, and Janice did not think that she's seen the peak from the post-Thanksgiving virus spread at this point. So just a reminder to everyone to please just be very careful as we gather through the holidays, New Year's, etc. Speaking of the holidays, you know, and I've mentioned this once before. I think it was maybe many months ago. Unfortunately, we've canceled a number of different events around the city. One of my favorites, Spirit of Christmas, unfortunately had to be postponed for obvious reasons. And I do want to say to everybody, and I will do my part as well. You know, the number of homes, and I know that Councilperson Leary, through her work on Dano Newcastle, has been challenged similarly. You know, these events, these are marquee events. People come here to see the homes. Obviously, in the springtime, they come to see the homes and the gardens. And we need more participation. A lot of the folks that do participate are getting up there in the years. It's a challenge. We've got a year to go out, recruit, you know, perhaps for Spirit of Christmas. And we could perhaps try to expand the numbers and have people kind of do something on an every other year basis. So we're not stretched for volunteers and or give people a kind of a break from year on, year out. Experienced that my own self from my prior residence at 300 Delaware Street. So it's wonderful, but it's a lot of work to have 700-800 people come through your house. But we do need more. That's a big driver for why people come. And a lot of the people who soldier on and do this are not getting any younger. Many expressed to me that, you know, they might be stepping back at some point here in the near future. So I think if we really value these events, and the public, sure. I will tell you, I was rather dubious about it when I first started doing this, but, you know, and every other person thanks you for opening their home, because this might be one of the only times they've ever seen a property like some of the treasured properties that we have in the city, large and small. It really is, they're grateful. And I can honestly say too, after, you know, 9-10 years of doing all that, we never lost anything. And the rewards were just in the faces and the commentary of the people that came through the house. So we really do all need to kind of do our part and see if we can recruit a few people who would be willing to give this a try. Also, let me just, again, in the interest of time, I've got a proclamation that I'd like to invite council to be part of tonight. And this idea came to me through the Baddies, Mark and Cynthia Batty on 3rd Street. The idea is quite simply is that on Christmas Eve at 6 o'clock, from 6 till 10, everybody could step out on their porch and ring a bell. I've taken this to Governor Carney and his staff, and I'm going to raise this on the next call with the different mayors around the state. We will, the origins of this will start here. And if it spreads to other communities around the state, it would be a really neat thing. So, Madam President, with that, I will conclude my remarks unless you want me to go ahead and read the proclamation and do this now.
If you would read the proclamation, then I'm going to ask for council to have a motion and vote on it so that we can add their names to it.
Okay.
So
okay.
if you would do that.
Sure. Okay. Proclamation, Bells of Christmastide, celebration of our frontline healthcare workers. Whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, our healthcare workers, including our doctors, nurses, pandemics, EMTs, and all first responders have proven themselves to be essential workers and frontline heroes. And whereas the challenges our frontline medical workers face, often while having to isolate themselves from their own families and loved ones, are immense and unprecedented. And whereas in recognition of their selfless dedication, the city of Newcastle would like to join with cities around the world in celebrating the Bells of Christmastide, a celebration of our frontline healthcare workers. And whereas the city of Newcastle would like to invite everyone to ring a bell for 10 minutes, properly socially distanced, with your mask on at 6 p.m. on December 24th. Whether large, small, or with many bells, let us make a joyful noise together to remember the acts of selfless service to our community and nation for all the dedicated nurses, doctors, hospital staff, and first responders who have been with us during the pandemic to help when we need them. Now, therefore, be it hereby proclaimed that I, Michael J. Quaranta, Mayor of the City of Newcastle, do hereby join with the City Council in recognizing our frontline medical workers for their unyielding dedication and proclaim December 24, 2020 as Bells of Christmastide, a celebration of our frontline healthcare workers.
and I encourage all residents to join with us to make a joyful noise together to thank these dedicated individuals.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion for council to join this proclamation?
So moved.
Second? Second from Ms. Souter. Okay, so all those in favor of joining this proclamation with the mayor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so our names are on there too. And we appreciate Ms. Batty and also the mayor bringing this forward. And I understand that Santa is an essential worker too and on the front lines. So this will also help Santa get where he needs to go. So, but thank you very much. It's a great thing to pay tribute to our healthcare workers. So anything else, Mayor?
No, thank you.
Okay. I have a few things I want to share. First, I want to thank the city workers and MSC and the Aristotle Garden Club for all the holiday decorations, and also the residents and businesses who are decorating their homes and store windows. The city is really looking lovely. I wanted to mention a couple of things in regards to grants. We did receive a grant on behalf of the trust, an outdoor recreation grant from the state, which will help support a path in Battery Park. The trust is paying, will be co-paying the matching funds, not matching, but a certain amount required to have the trail go through. So we received that grant, and then also we received a grant from the Delaware Bicycle Council, which is to study feasibility of joining the end of the Jack Markell Trail to Battery Park. And having received that, then we would get a study done by an engineer that's also working on the transportation plan. So that would be important for improving safety. Also would like to share some personal news with everyone. It's been an honor to serve as your city council president for over the last 7 years. And I really want to thank everyone for placing their confidence in me by electing me twice. Together we're building a stronger Newcastle, a more vibrant Newcastle. And there's work that still needs to be done, certainly, but I think it's time for someone else to lead. And so after very careful consideration these last few months, I've decided not to seek a re-election next April. My motivation's always been love of the city and all its citizens. And I want to thank all the hardworking elected officials and city employees, and also our volunteer commissions and boards. We have a well-run, fiscally responsible city that's responsive to the needs of the citizens. And I think that makes all of us feel good. And we've done a lot of accomplishments over the last several years. And there's some things that I feel particularly strong about. And that's working with the state and the county and the trust to make us a more walkable, bikeable, and accessible city. Also having a new pier and restoring our waterfront access and becoming the second home for the Kalmar Nickel. And then addressing storm drainage and street infrastructure needs, everything from large projects like Washington Park to Delaware Street, but also many repavings on alleys and streets throughout the city, which are so important to the people that live there. More effective and efficient city operations has meant no property tax increases, and we now have a better resource police department focused on community policing, which means more proactive problem solving and increased safety. We've also made strides in quality of life issues such as tree canopy, clean streets like with our street sweeper, and historic preservation with new guidelines, and also becoming a certified local government. In addition to some of the code enforcement actions that we're going to talk some more about later on in the meeting. We're at risk for flooding and from tidal surges, and we've made progress with the DNREC on that, on assessing our vulnerabilities and taking specific steps. But the work continues, and it's a long process, as we talked at the last meeting. And we're really well positioned as a city. We've got a new comprehensive plan, downtown development incentives, and a transportation plan update in progress. So I'm proud that what all of us together have accomplished. and know that the city is in, good hands and will be in good hands with the next city council. Newcastle has always thrived in challenging situations like the pandemic or a storm or really tough economic times. And what I've learned is that one person can make a difference, and the ultimate strength of our city lies in its citizens. And though I'll no longer be your council president after April, I will continue to be your neighbor and help you in any way I can. And I thanks again to the people of Newcastle for giving this great opportunity to serve. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
been
you.
wonderful working with everyone, but I've got 5 more months, so we got to get back to work here.
Okay, never mind that. I'll wait.
I'm not gone now. I did want to go to the next item, which is a council discussion and possible action on city operations budget recovery due to COVID. Anything we need to discuss there? Is the city administrator getting all our bills in so we get reimbursed by the end of the year?
Yes, Madam President. In fact, we had submitted, it either went in today or will go in tomorrow, which will be the final. We may put in one more before the month is out for maybe some more hand sanitizer and gloves, but we've actually been stocking up on that and we're in pretty good shape. The last order, as I said, the most significant order, if you will, was going in, or request was going in today, which would put us at about $89,000 of requests through the CARES Act, a total of about $106,000 if you include the police and what they've received through their own grants. But like I said, about 89 through the county. And then if you add the money that we put in for MSC, the request for MSC, we're at about $102,000. So we absolutely, made the deadline, beat the deadline, and we're in, I would say, relatively pretty good shape in regards to the equipment we need and the equipment we're going to be receiving to finish out the retrofit in our, in our offices.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city administrator? Anything else council needs to address at this time? Okay. We're going to move on to the next topic, which is discussion of vacant and abandoned buildings. This is your topic, Ms. Leary. Would you like to introduce it?
At our last meeting, I had brought up if there was anything, I had brought up the question as if there was anything that we can do to help minimize, that would lead to minimizing vacant buildings here in town. A lot of them have just sat here for years and years, and they do pay their fines, but it's still not really viable and it's not attractive at all. And how can we encourage these owners to renovate or repair or sell their home? To that end, Mr. Lasko has put together some recommendations, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Ms. Leary. We've kind of looked at our current code, and we've looked at a variety of other city codes. And we think we have a basic outline already in our vacant property statute to address some of these things, but we'd like to close a loophole or two. And one of them is eliminating that blanket listed for sale exception that says that you're not really a vacant property as long as you're on the multi-list. And we had seen at least 1 or 2 episodes where people would list for a while, take it off, not actively market or not market in good faith, just as a means of avoiding registration fees and that type of thing. So I think that's an important change. Regardless of whether a property is listed for sale or not, it should be registered within 30 days at the end of the first year. And then the registration fees would apply no matter what. If they aren't paid, again, we can take that kind of a property to sheriff's sale. I also think, and I know I've talked to Mr. Barthel about this and he agrees, that there's sometimes a concern about while the exterior of a vacant property may appear reasonably good, the interior may be unsafe. And so that a property that's on the vacant list for more than 2 years should be subject to inspection by the building official at least annually. And we could apply doubling registration fees, for example, for the refusal or inability to gain access to a property and thereby expedite taking it to a munition sale if necessary because of noncompliance. So we continue to think that using the finding system and bringing a property to sheriff's sale is the most effective way to get properties back into the system. And that is getting back, making them used. While at the same time protecting property rights for individuals who are maintaining a property fully code compliant. It's just not lived in for whatever reason. It's not a, it's a property where they've moved out of state, but they want to retain in the family. Maybe they're on deployment. There could be other reasons why they want it vacant, but as long as they are fully code compliant, paying their registration fees, we're hesitant to do anything more to force a property to become occupied. But we like to also draw a distinction between a merely vacant property and one that is boarded up. The boarded up property strikes us as more of a blighted property because of its necessary visual impacts, not only on the community and its property values, but also as an invitation for vandals or vagrants or what have you. So in those cases, we're thinking more that if a property is boarded up for 6 months or more and no building permit has been taken to begin work, that it will start incurring fines on a daily basis. Some cities, we've seen them as high as $1,000 a day. I don't know if that's appropriate, but we do think that $500 a day is reasonable under these kind of situations. If you've got a property that's boarded up, maybe due to a fire damage or something like that, 6 months should be plenty of time to process your insurance claim, engage a contractor, pull a building permit, and start the rehabilitation process. Anybody not doing that should be given these aggressive fines so that if they don't get up off their chair there to take care of it, we can again take it to a munition sale. Of course, advance notice would need to be given to any owner at the time of boarding up the property, warning of this, so that they don't claim surprise. The goal isn't here to sneak up on somebody and use this finding system as a means of generating revenue or a means of trying to take their property from them without them really being given fair warning. The goal here is to remove the blighted condition from the community. And then we have certain circumstances where a property may have been boarded up and it has just been sold. For example, we do take a boarded property to a sheriff's sale. The existing fines must be paid at the settlement, whether it's done by munition or done by private sale. The new owner would incur again the $500 a day penalties if he doesn't pull his building permit within 30 days of the sale. The daily fines again would continue here and again allow us to be more aggressive about proceeding on this. We would request that they take care of the rehabilitation within 6 months. If there's a hardship situation or the job can't be done in that period of time, they can apply to the city for an extension. And of course, anybody should have due process rights to appeal a decision to the Board of Building Appeals. But we think this is a more aggressive way of approaching the real problematic properties, and those are the ones that are blighted and boarded up.
I have a couple of questions, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to you when I first got this, but I've been at work the last few days. So assuming, some boarded up properties, they've already been boarded up for years now. Are we, assuming we were able to put this in record, would we be able to go back and have, starting this day, not in forgetting the fact that it's already been boarded up for 4 or 5 years, starting this day, give you the 6 months?
Yes, I don't think you could apply it retroactively and instantly start fining them $500 a day. They would need to get notice. To the extent we can identify them. There's certain of these properties, we don't know who the owners are or where they are or if they're living. And we've recently gone through an extensive list of delinquent properties and boarded up properties with city administration, Mr. Barthel, Ms. Walls. And a number of these owners are just nowhere to be found. They're either deceased and no estates have been opened, or they've left the area and we have no record of their current ownership. So notice letters to them come back unclaimed. So these again are good properties to target for these munition sales.
Okay. I did read this and think over it, and I thought these were some very good things that we could do for this, especially under vacant building recommendations, number 1, which is eliminate the blanket listed for sale. You put it on the market, to take it off, they put it on, they take it off, and I can think of a couple homes of this that have been vacant since I've lived here, and they put it on the market and take it off. So I'd like to try to go ahead and, does anyone have comments on these or concerns?
I do have another question. When you say pull a building permit in 2B, do you mean apply for it or actually receive it?
Receive it.
Okay.
Pulling it means having it issued.
Okay. But in the historic district where hack approval is required, if you miss the deadline for next month's meeting, when you file your application 1 day after the deadline to get on the agenda for the next month's meeting, then you can't get on their agenda till the following month, which by definition is going to be more than 30 days. So I don't know if we need to make an alteration, maybe make it 60 days to accommodate that scheduling problem. And then my larger concern is, do you think these very aggressive rules for new owners would discourage people from purchasing these properties?
That's a point that I know Mr. Barthel and I discussed, and I think that is a potential consideration. What I'm thinking mostly of are people these investors who buy admonition sales, that sheriff sales. If it becomes common knowledge that the city of Newcastle is going to hammer you and hammer you quickly unless you jump on these properties, it could have a chilling effect on their bidding. That is a possibility. And what happens in that event, if nobody's bidding on a property that we take to sheriff's sale, the city ends up becoming the owner. In that event, Chapter 54 of our code would dictate that the property becomes a surplus property. And we're in the process then of having it appraised, offered to MSC and the trustees if they want it or want to engage in rehabilitation. And if they don't, then we can market it ourselves and approach builders that we know have worked with us in the past and have been diligent about completing renovation projects in the past. So yeah, it could have a chilling effect. That's possible, but the city ultimately will gain control of those properties and will be able to direct the property to, I think, a responsible party. It's not always, that's an administrative, issue. I mean, there's not always interested builders, but in the past, we've had some good success with that.
If I may make a comment on that, Ms. Souter, to your point, we have most investors who go to the sheriff's sale, who are solid, reputable investors who put down, whether they put down, 5,000 or 15 or 20,000 or more on a tax sale the day of the sale, aren't going to walk away from it. The guys that we're trying to keep, the guys who are going to do that aren't reputable to begin with. And we have had that situation. It's happened only a couple of times where we've had sales where the property's bought, it continues to be boarded up and nothing is done on it. Or the property's been bought and we've taken it to foreclosure again a year later. Now, whether or not that was, I believe that happened with a vacant property, but also with a boarded up property. So I don't believe we're gonna, I don't believe we're gonna be, that's going to have a negative impact on people wanting to come into the city. It's just going to be more reputable buyers that we're going to want to begin with. I mean, that's my thought on it.
And as for the councilperson Larry, as for the building permit, that's the one issued by the city, not anything from hack. Is that correct?
To get a building permit in the historic area, you have to have hack approval if it's exterior work, right? Am I right?
You are right about that. But this is Dan Losco again. But I can also point out this, you know, the memo says 30 days of sale. That's a little, I'm taking a shortcut approach to that. The actual sale, if we take the property to sale, happens on day one, but there's a 60-day redemption period before the buyer can even apply to get his sheriff's deed. And in that period of time, he could apply to Hack still as the equitable owner of the property to seek whatever approvals he needs. So, and then gets his deed, pulls his building permit within the 30 days. So I don't think that's an insurmountable problem. I don't have a problem with giving extra time to somebody who is acquiring a property in the historic zone. But again, that redemption period does give the buyer a window of 60 days at least to go to get their Hack approvals.
But don't they have to pay their application fee at the point they file the application? And therefore, if it was in the rare occurrence that it was redeemed during that redemption period, then they'd lose that money?
Yeah, these properties don't get redeemed. I gotta tell you, I've been doing this for 10 plus years. I haven't seen it once. You've seen it, Jeff?
No, I just wanted to point out that repairs in kind generally are tier 1 approvals and are relatively instant. So that unless they're trying to really modify the building, put an addition on it, or somehow really change the exterior of the property in a historic district, the very few properties that become vacant in the historic district are not going to be slowed up by the HAC process.
Yeah,
Very,
but
very
there's one, Suzanne Souter again, there's one very prominent one that we've discussed before, and I would imagine it would need significant exterior work and therefore would require Hack approval.
As long as the repairs were in kind to put the building back the way that it was before the deterioration started, there doesn't have to wait for anything other than a tier 1 approval.
As long as they're not making a big change, in other words, to the exterior.
Right, they'd have to be making a big change, and they could probably get started without, bifurcate the process.
Council President.
Yeah, Mayor, go ahead.
I would say to Ms. Souter, first of all, I would applaud Ms. Leary for this proposal. This is something that, I talked about a couple of years ago when I was on council. I know Mr. Platt did as well. And so I think this is directionally the right thing to do. To Councilperson Souter, I would say, and the solicitor can talk about this too. The Hack chair, I served on Hack for 5 years. Hack chair does have emergency authority. So they do have provisions in their policies and procedures to act in a more speedy timeframe if in consultation with the building official if they feel that that's necessary.
I think the idea of the vacant building, this is Council President Ratchford, the recommendations, those are great recommendations so people don't just cycle through saying they're trying to sell. I think that the boarded properties, I generally like them. I think we need to build in some flexibility. You might have someone that has started work and needs more time or doing some of the work themselves. I think the hard part is when they're boarded up, they're so ugly and it's a real drain on the neighborhood. But if someone has the outside looking good and still finishing the kitchen up, that doesn't really bother me as much, as long as they're active. So I'm not sure what the right thing to do there is. I just don't want to, I want to reward good work and punish the people that are really dawdling.
This is Dan Losko. I mentioned in the memo, I think this is item 2D, that if it's going to take more than 6 months, the owner can contact the city. Maybe it's the building official or the city administrator can grant extensions up to 9 months. The way I said it was up to 9 months, but it could be longer than that. Again, this is kind of an outline, a discussion draft. As I start getting into, if you like this approach, as I start getting into the drafting of the ordinance, that's where the real rubber is going to hit the road, and I'm going to find a lot of nuances like that need to be addressed. One of those is, for example, creating some kind of a hardship standard. If somebody is aggrieved by the 9-month rule or the 6-month rule or a rejection of an application to extend, then, what's the standard going to be for the Board of Building Appeals to consider that? Is it just, are we shooting from our hip? There's got to be some kind of defined standard. And that's going to be something that's going to take a little thought and deliberation.
Councilman Platt here. Just a couple quick questions. With vacant buildings, all this does is make them register a vacant building. It doesn't really force them to do anything, in my mind.
Well,
I mean, in reality, okay, we're closing the real estate loophole, so to say, but we're not forcing them to sell a vacant building. So if I have a vacant building, I pay my $200 a year, and I pay my $500 next year, so forth and so on.
Okay.
I don't see that. I don't see that.
I guess our point, I guess the thought is that I have a hard time, personally, this is my personal feeling, I have a hard time taking a property to sheriff's sale or otherwise forcing it to be occupied if the property is properly maintained, fully code compliant, and a person just chooses not to have it occupied at that time for whatever reason. Whether it's on, if they're willing to pick up the tab that increases annually up to, you know, thousands of dollars a year to register a vacant property, pay their taxes on it, maintain it code compliantly, you know, it's hard to take that property from them. And I know of no way to force them to make it become occupied, other than to force them to take it to a sheriff's sale. So the question is, does council want to take those fully code compliant properties, fully registered, properly paid, properly insured, or go?
Oh, you froze.
Mr. Lasky, you froze as Councilman Platt again. I totally agree with what you were saying, and that's what I'm saying. So I mean, taking the loophole out, okay, you took the loophole out, it really hasn't cleaned up any properties. I agree with you. I don't think we have that right. The other thing I would do is a property, I would take it to 1 year. Vacant properties, condemned properties, they do attract bad things. They attract fires, they attract vagrants, they attract drug addicts. And like Ms. Rashford said, yes, you can take care of the front of your house, but you're still working on your kitchen. You know, a vacant house from the front can look like it's still being well maintained, but nobody's going inside and inspecting it. And I think we should take that to a year.
Okay.
There can be work. Excuse me, Ms. Leary, just one quick second. I think there was a house on 7th Street at one point where they had a pipe leak and the basement filled with mold and the walls grew with mold, and they ended up having to tear it down a few years back. That wasn't a vacant house or whatever. It happened just by somebody was either deployed or away in Florida, whatever happened there. But that was kind of the story. So that's the only change I've made. I mean, you want to take the real estate loophole out, that's fine. I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or the other. All we're going to do is get more fines. And personally, I think $500 a day is an exorbitant fee. I mean, it's $180,000 a year. You know, do we want to get into the business of, at that point, we're on the sheriff's sale rather rapidly? Do we want to own properties like that going in the sheriff's sale?
Excuse me, may I just address that, Mr. Platt, please?
Sure.
Okay, so we've had experiences with banks where we've gone in and the property's had a fire. Very recently, okay, we're a property, we've gone in, we fixed the roof, we stabilized the front porch, we pump out the basement, we spend $8,000, and where we've been paid by the mortgage company or someone managing the property. So now we're down to zero. Now, any bank who's going to come in and do this, or any resident who says, okay, the city, I'm just going to sit on this for, you know, whatever, they're only going to pay that money so many times. And you're right, that is a large fee. We've had banks that have paid for, we've had residents that have paid for boarded up properties, $12,000, and the property sat for another year, and we foreclosed again. I can, you know, now what that would do in that instance is what it would speed it up. We would foreclose again in a much quicker time frame. But in those instances where banks don't really care and they pay that money, eventually a bank's going to go, whoa, I got to stop this.
Right.
We're going to have to do something about it.
And then,
Councilperson Leary, I agree with Councilperson Platt on lowering the 2 years to 1 year. On one property that on Delaware Street, you know, it may look somewhat code compliant from the outside, but I've been inside that house. There may have been some renovations recently done, but I can assure you that it's probably not code compliant because in the house, but those also become hazards for neighbors for fires. Now that one has some space around it, but if something caught fire, although I don't know if the electric's on in it, but the $500, I think that like Mr. Barthel was saying, if I understood him right, is that's going to discourage a bank from sitting on it for so long, you know.
Right.
And when you were researching this, Mr. Losco, what the fines that you found from other cities, you mentioned some were higher.
Yeah, one Philadelphia, I think, is $1,000 a day. Yeah, that was pretty good. And I like that Philadelphia statute because of it, the way it distinguished the boarded up properties as quote blighted and gave them that special treatment to be aggressive.
Councilman Platt here, I would love to see their collection rate, but going back to what Ms. Councilperson Leary just said, if they go into a building under our code, we have pretty much a set of things that say a building is dangerous. You know, if you look at 141.3, there's a list of things that say what is dangerous. My last question will be is on the transfer of ownership of a boarded up building. The way it's written and the way I read it is it can't be transferred until the fines are taken care of. They would either have to be paid up at settlement or.
But that's how all munitions sales and stuff go. Is that correct? That the
It says it's unlawful for any owner of a building or structure who have received a compliance order or upon notice of a violation who have been served, so forth and so on. So I'm just, I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing for you. Before our next meeting, somebody take a look at it. Transfer ownership at 141.13. I just want to make sure we're still within our rights. That's all.
Well, at settlement, a fine that's outstanding would be paid, but that's typically a normal third-party arm's length type of sale. And these properties are typically going to sheriff's sale. So what happens is that whether or not you actually recover the fine amount will depend upon what the high bid price is and what's the net take from the sheriff's sale after the sheriff's fees are taken, the sheriff's commission, the auctioneer fees, the court cost, etc.
Okay, so we would have to go through a sheriff's sale. It couldn't go through a private sale, the way this would read. I'm not going to tie everybody up on this, but like I said, I took the time today and came home, just kind of read through it real quick, and that one jumped out at me that the owner can't sell or transfer anything until everything is taken care of. And I understand, you know, when you go to a bank, you stay on a settlement. If you owe your SOAR tax, they take that out, so forth and so on. That's the only question I'm asking. It just says it's unlawful for that to happen.
But that's a primary sale. That's me selling my house to you or vice versa.
No. Any order of compliance states. So if there's an order of compliance that has to be settled before an owner can sell the house. The way I read it, like I said, I said last meeting, I'm an undertaker, not a lawyer. I just, Mr. Losco, when you're writing that, just take a look at that. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest that we go forward with an ordinance or to rewrite or correct the areas of code that need to be corrected and add what we need to add.
Can I make a motion that we have like a workshop like we did with the emergency code and like walk through this? There's probably 13, 14 pages. I mean, what else has to be changed in this?
This is Council President Ratchford. We can do this two ways. One, we could go to a more of a workshop, or we could since we're having a discussion now, we could ask the city solicitor to go ahead and draw up an ordinance and then go through the public hearing process. We don't always do the workshop like we didn't do it on the Board of Health that we're going to vote on tonight. I think it just depends whether it's a very, very complex issue and we're that far apart. I'm not hearing that we're that far apart. I'm hearing that it needs to be studied more and then it needs to be brought in. Obviously, we want public input on this. And, you know, so that's what I'm thinking. We could just go to draft ordinance. Ms. Leary, I mean.
No, that's what I suggest is go to a draft ordinance and then it may get discussed over a couple meetings, but it's there. And
On the same page.
so,
Okay, so you would like, this is President, you'd like to go for another discussion prior to posting as an ordinance?
well, I'd like to see what the ordinance is as it's written, what it will be, and then, you know, go back and also how it's gonna, and I'll depend on Mr. Losco for this. You know, I'm not an attorney, I'm a paramedic. So, you know, how the code as it's right, as it is now, and then what this ordinance will change in it. And so.
Okay, so this Council President, so Ms. Leary and Mr. Platt are saying the same thing. Go to a draft, but let's have another discussion. Let's don't post it as ready for public hearing and a vote.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
all right. That sounds suitable, Mr. Losco? Okay.
All right, thanks, Ms. Red. Yeah, that sounds fine. I'll confer with Mr. Barthel, Mr. Bergstrom, as well as I do the drafting part of it, and try to come back to you with something comprehensive that can be discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is an important topic. At this point, I'm going to go back to the public comments. So I'd like to open it up for any public comments on this topic, any other topic that's been discussed, or any other topic you'd like to bring up that council's opinion or response on. So are there any hands raised?
Yes, I'll bring Phil Gross into the meeting, and then we also have Lisa Whitaker, who has her hand raised as well.
Okay. Whoever was first. Is Mr. Gross first?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gross?
Good evening, council. First, I'd like to wish council, your families, city workers, and of course, the fellow residents in Newcastle, a happy, healthy, and above all, safe holiday. And thank you, President Ratchford, for your service. I might not have agreed with everything, but overall, you did a stellar job. You held things together.
Thank you.
Going down my list, I think if, again, we're going to go through with new trash cans on Delaware Street, every time you talk about trash cans, you've got to include some type of recycling segment of it. I've suggested a couple companies that'll do it very inexpensively. Going on to the floating dock, it was really helpful, Mr. Barthel, your input saying the state money. I think if you're going to vote on going ahead with it, any modifications, any changes, anything over the amount that will be given by the state, I don't want to see the city pay for. I think the budget for that dock should be held at whatever funds we are getting from the state. Moving on, the special meetings, just like the regular meetings, they all should have public input as well as a segment of the meeting for the public to speak. I don't think special meetings are any different than a regular meeting. Moving last to the municipal campus, I firmly believe now's not the time to even spend the money for the next segment. It's $8,200 a year to rent for a public person to rent from the senior center. So I would assume, I would hope that the city council and city would get a break on that. We need to put money for river rise, other environmental issues before 10 years from now, we find ourselves literally underwater. So money's got to be allocated for that. We're spending money on upgrades, like our administrator said, for the HVAC and for other upgrades, that spend 50,000, spend 100,000 to keep those up for the next year, then spend the 15 or 30,000 for the next segment of checking out what to do and plans. So again, I speak as well as I'm sure most of the residents would be against even going on the next level of information. So thank you again, and please be safe, everyone.
Ms. Whitaker? Thank you, Mr. Gross. Ms. Whitaker, are you on?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Lisa Whitaker. I live at 26 East 4th Street. And I wanted to talk to council tonight about some flooding that we were having that is increasing throughout the time that we've lived here. We've lived here since 2011. And the backyards between 4th and 5th Street on the east side are flooding, and there's a flow of water every time it rains. This is, I think you have a picture of our backyard right now. And I wanted to get some suggestions for all of you, from all of you, as to what we need to do with this flooding. I know that it's not just us. Our neighbor, Henry and Joanne Patrick at 28 East 4th, have the same issue. And Joanne has told me, she's lived here much longer than we have, that it has gotten worse and worse over the last 5 years. And it looks like, it sounds like it might be getting worse from what I'm hearing with the meeting tonight. So what is it that we can do, and what can we do in the future to reduce this?
I would ask Mr. Bergstrom to have any comments on this. He's most familiar with flooding issues in the city.
Well, sure. As climates change and land is worked on, you have more and more problems with flooding. We've had more 500-year flood events in the past couple of years than we had in recorded history in this town. So it's not surprising that some backyards flood, but the appropriate venue here is probably getting the conservation district involved. I'm sorry, but we'll talk to the conservation district, and we'll talk to Senator Poore and see if a solution can be designed to fix this. Flowing water would indicate that water is coming from uphill to the property, but of course, the top of the hill is more or less in front of 313 Delaware Street. So there's not much, the drainage area is not very big here. What we were going to look for is impairments in downstream drainage. And that's something that that's the mission of the conservation district. So I think we can certainly call them in there.
So
and
Mr.
if the neighbors would like to meet, we can get the application going.
So
There's 2 on deck right now, 3 actually.
So you're going to meet with Ms. Whitaker and bring in the conservation district to take a look at that whole area?
If she would want me to, I would be happy to.
Yes. And we'll include Joanne and Henry as well.
Right. Perhaps a little bit later in the week, we can organize something.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Ms. Whitaker, could I jump in on this? And I'm just curious, Jeff, I'll ask you too. I'm having the same problem, so are my neighbors. Is it just because of the amount of rainfall this year? I have a low-lying area in my yard, but it's probably been worse. At one point, I was going to have somebody come out. I thought I had an underground spring. There was so much water in my side backyard, my neighbor's backyard, and I just came to the conclusion, and I don't know what Ms. Whitaker's problem is exactly. I haven't seen it. I would love to see it after a rainstorm. But is it just that this hydrostatic pressure is there? The ground can't absorb any more water?
The ground gets totally saturated, actually you're in probably just about the worst lot in town. Remember that catch basin that's on your property line in the rear? That was installed as an after.
Is there a
after the
catch
fact.
basin on my property? I never gave him permission for that.
But it was there before you were, I think. But the catch basin is clear and running. So it might be that the ground is shifted a little bit. We need to make sure the water drains directly to that catch basin. There's room to do some modifications to that too. I can certainly get the conservation district involved and or the city engineer. And that should be a relatively minor thing to help, but it might involve you replacing some soil in your yard to make sure the water is directed right to the catch basin.
Well, that's my plan actually, but I was just throwing that out there for suggestion. I don't know what the problem is. It could be citywide.
A 5-inch rain event, if we get 5 inches of rain an hour and we're a relatively flat state, nothing good is going to happen. You just have to wait for it to dry out.
Fair enough.
Good, no good be coming of that.
No. Has a comment? Mayor has a comment.
Great, thank you, Council President. I want to do a little bit of level set, and I'll take 30 seconds to do that. I think some of the folks in the meeting tonight know that I spent the better part of 30 years working in the Congress, both in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. And so let me talk a little bit about sea level rise and where we fit in the larger scheme of things. There is precious little that a municipality of $5,500 can do, 5,500 people with a very small budget can do. This is, if you think back to the Eisenhower administration and the interstate highway system, it's going to take an effort as we as a nation move to the coasts, the east and west coast, and then down south. It's going to have to be a massive public works project that the federal government is going to have to lead. So while there are things, and I applaud the council president, councilperson Souter, who they've all attended several meetings, there are other resiliency topics, and there are things that we have to plan to do. But in terms of the literally billions of dollars that it's going to take to protect the state of Delaware, Maryland, the Carolinas, and so forth, those are going to have to be federal projects. They're going to have to be federally financed, probably state managed, and coordinated with a whole bunch of different municipalities in the states up and down the coasts, because you can't bunker yourself in and put your neighbor in peril. So while there are important things for us to do to be prepared and to not exacerbate problems that would lead to greater flooding, I think it's important for all of us to communicate to the public. Our role in this is to be planning and prepared, but to be in regular conversation with federal and state officials, because it's going to take that size of an effort in order to address this in any kind of meaningful and measured way over a long period of time. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank Ms. Go ahead, Ms. Whitaker.
I'm sorry. No, this is Kim. I have City Clerk Brian Whitaker has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Whitaker, what would you like to say?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so as the city clerk, I like to chime into this discussion. And so back in the 1986, 85, I don't remember when, the Whitakers moved to Van Dyke. But the point of the matter is that there was a hill. Teresa Gammacorda, my mother, me, other people planted on this hill. And as the years went by, the hill eroded. And my parents had noticed that there's a stream in the backyard when it rains. The bottom line is that my parents did a lot of research, and the real estate agent did not tell my parents that they built on a marsh. And my parents were infuriated. And they were very infuriated that they were not told that the house was built on the marsh and they have flooding in the basement. But we still lived here in Van Dyke otherwise. So nevertheless, when it rains, I scoop up the koi and the goldfish and put it back into the pond. Okay, but there's barriers and stuff I built to prevent that problem. But this problem of the erosion is chronic because that hill's not there. It vanished. So we're in a marsh. The real estate agent's going to tell us, and that's a big problem. So we just lived with it because when you put a mortgage to a house, it's very difficult to sell the house and all the whole 9 yards. You got to pay off the mortgage and then sell it because you're paying 2 mortgages in the eyes of the bank. But in any event, that is a concern in the city of Newcastle. Also, I want to point out that Mr. Platt, Councilperson Platt, has a point about this address lane. There's 2 14th Streets in the city of Newcastle, Washington Park, and the other one in Van Dyke. So at one time that the postmaster had put 4510 for the Van Dyke side of town. And Mr. Councilperson Platt is also very correct that people put Van Dyke Village on the envelope. Even my mom still does that to this day. They're maroon, well, they're kind of stuck in North Carolina, and I'm just managing the house while I go to work. But in any event, people have problems with their mail, and Councilperson Platt is correct about the Van Dyke, and also report 4510. So the mailing issue is bigger than just putting historic Newcastle on the envelope. And I give a lot of kudos to Councilperson Smith for all his hard work and diligence to make historic Newcastle recognized. And that's what I like to hear, and that's what I like to say. And the third but final thing I'd like to address the council with is, I've been working on a group home, so I see firsthand what goes on. And it's very structured. I deal with 2 clients, and that there's constant staff there for the 2 young men that we take care of. And the neighbors know that they're the group home because it looks unique. It's a row of houses. But yet, no one's allowed in from the public that is not authorized inside the group home. No, I'm elected Ross. So I just want to let you know that the group homes are safe and they're highly regulated. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. We will continue to work on these issues. There's the localized flooding issue. It can have many different causes. And then, of course, the issues that the mayor brought up too, that is a long range issue we have to address. So any other public comments this evening, or go into the other agenda items?
No, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to, this is going to be, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to dispense with the second reading of ordinance number 530 to amend and restate Article 2 of Chapter 193 Board of Health.
So moved.
Who motion was?
So moved.
So moved from Ms. Leary. Who second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor of dispensing of the second reading indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, nays. Okay, so we've got that dispensed with, and we're going to go at this point. I need a motion for a discussion and vote on ordinance number 530. Do I have that, a motion for number 530?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second for Ms. Leary. Okay, this is a vote on an ordinance to amend and restate Article 2 of Chapter 193 Board of Health of the Code of City of Newcastle. We had a public hearing earlier, and this ordinance has been out for comments.
Councilperson Ross, I am
Any other discussion?
elected.
Any other discussion on this one? Okay, then we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of ordinance number 530 indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, ordinance 530 has passed. Okay, we're going to go out to our last business item, and that's going to be a discussion of possible city flag designs. I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to introduce that.
Thank you. Kim, will you put up the first slide?
Hey, Russ, it's the mayor. Brian, you might want to mute yourself. I think you might not be muted.
Okay. I sent you all quite a bit of information about this possible new design flag. And,
You're faded out, Russ, on the volume.
oh, geez. I spent 2 hours with Hewlett Packard fixing the microphone. Let's see. And well, we have gotten the help of the North American Vexillological Association to help design a flag for us. They're working for free, although they have said if we pick one of their designs, they would not refuse a donation. And anyway, this is where we are now. I've like to present some designs to you, and I don't want to try to come to any decision tonight, but to get some of your reactions and plot out a way forward, maybe a way for the citizens of Newcastle to have some input, but I'd like to get your comments and reactions. And I'll introduce the flags. The flag in the upper right, of course, is our current flag. And the flag experts call that the city seal on a sheet. And it's very common. It doesn't say anything about Newcastle. It's not something that conveys any kind of the presence of Newcastle. I think the idea of a flag should inspire some kind of pride, and in the best case scenario, be the type of flag that you'd want to fly on your front lawn. So going through the other flags, the top left uses the colors from the standards that we've already chosen, the design standards for the city. On the left, you have three outlines of Fort Casimir, and they represent the three European occupations of Newcastle. And the line next to them represents the Delaware River. And then, of course, the cupola represents the courthouse. Below that, the next flag below, again, it uses the colors from the branding standards. And you have Fort Casimir again. You have the river represented by the blue. And then the star in the middle is rather interesting because it represents the 5 cultures that have occupied Newcastle. You have the 3 European civilizations, and you have Lenape, and then you have the American civilization. Second down from the top, of course, Fort Casimir again, and the star represents Newcastle's role as the colonial capital and as the first state capital. And going back to the flag on the lower left, that is a star as well, and it represents the same thing, Newcastle's role as a capital. And then in the lower right, the wavy lines, of course, represent the river, and then, of course, the outline of Fort Casimir. So that's what we have. We could do mix and match. If you like something in one flag and not in another, or you want to move things around, or you have different ideas. We have other flags to bring into the choices, but this is what we felt represented the efforts of the designers so far. So with that, I think I'll leave it to you to get your reactions. One reaction might be, I like the city seal on a bed sheet. And that's certainly legitimate, but we're trying for something a little above that, a little more sophisticated.
I have to applaud Councilman Smith when he first kind of started this. And I hope that all of you took time to view the YouTube video and the link that he sent, because the presentation by the gentleman is very interesting and it's actually humorous. And it just makes a lot of great points that would have you looking at these flags in the right way. So I have a couple of my favorites. I don't want to point them out right now, but you know, city seal on a bed sheet. I would love to fly something a little more interesting than that off of my house. And so I am open to looking at perhaps modifying our city flag.
I have to say, this is Suzanne Souter, I'm surprised that the revised city seal with the 4 flags isn't represented in any of these design options, because that would tie the flag to the logos on the city property and so forth. And none of these things make that connection. And frankly, if Mr. Smith hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known that this represented the outline of Fort Casimir. So I would think it would take a great deal of public education to get people to understand what these things mean.
And that's a crime. People who live here in
Perhaps
Newcastle.
so, but if perhaps
I understand.
so,
I
if
understand.
the flag is intended to represent the city, promote the city, you know, if people have to read 2 pages to understand what it means, how effective can it be?
Okay.
Councilman Souter, I agree with you on that. If for Kashmir, I think Kashmir goes back to my heritage. I think they were pretty good generals back in Poland and across the Revolutionary War. But when I look at them, if that's the flag of Fort Kashmir, that's fine. I agree. We should probably look to we spent a lot of money on branding a few years back. Everything on this that the city owns right now has those 4 flags. And it's not a bad looking flag. The only thing I would really truly like to see, and I went through a bunch of cities over the weekend. Most cities have their name on the flag because they're not recognizable. Like you look at the flag of Texas, for example, you know, it's red and blue and with a white star, you know, that type of thing. I think we should look to have our name on it. If that was one of these flags was flying off the back of the Kalmar nickel and it pulled into Lewis, I would have no clue what it is. But everyone else, I appreciate the work you put into it and all, but I mean, the seal on a bed sheet shows who we are, tells what this town is.
I will.
Okay, just one thought on that. In the guide that the society put out, and the good flag, bad flag, and the video, you know, writing on a flag is considered a no-no by the flag experts. I'm just saying that's what they say.
Considered by whom? This organization?
Yeah, these are the flag experts in this country. These
There
are the
is
guys.
such an organization, yeah.
Yeah, you know,
we'll call it NAVA because I can't say vexillological.
like I said, I have to agree with Councilman Souter. When I look at those 4, if you would have told me what they were, I would have no clue what they are.
Yeah, and one of the standards of the good flag, bad flag is it should be, you know, immediately recognizable.
Okay.
And some are pretty simple that are pretty popular. The District of Columbia and Chicago both have lines and stars, and that's it. And yet people find them popular. They sell mugs with the flag on them. People fly the flags on their front lawn. Okay, I understand. That's good input.
Russ, I kind of agree with you on that with the Chicago, but that's like on their police cars and everything. That's kind of that's been their brand probably for 100 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've taken that flag. I mean, you're right. It does have 3 stars, and I think it's blue and white. But it's just been their brand now.
Yeah.
When I see that, I know that's Chicago for some reason.
DC is the same way. I don't think anybody.
We just lost you.
Jeez, 2 hours with Hewlett Packard. DC is the same way. I don't think anybody could tell you that their symbols are taken from Washington's coat of arms. I think they're just 3 stars, 3 red stars, and then a couple of red stripes. But it's very simple, and they identify with it. Okay. If that's
Russ, I'd like to give you a little bit of input if I could, Madam President.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So first of all, thank you very much. I called Councilperson Smith earlier today and wanted to thank him. I thought these were really interesting and really a great thought-provoking cut. Councilman Plath, thank you for the nod to my hometown as a native Chicagoan. Yeah, the city flag is quite recognizable. The blue stripes representing the Chicago River and Lake Michigan, and the stars representing significant times in history. And I think one of the options that Mr. Smith gave us had similar, either the indigenous people and the others that occupied the area. One of the questions I had for the councilman, Mr. Smith, is this. So we're bigger than the downtown area, as we all know, every single one of us knows. Did the people kind of take into consideration, or I guess, was the entire area settled? Was it occupied, if you will? And I don't mean in the military sense of an occupation, perhaps, but was the footprint larger so that if we ran this out and we showed people all the way from Dobbinsville to Boothurst and Buttonwood and everywhere in between, all of the elements that are represented that they've provided to us represent the larger area. Obviously, the political boundary of the city of Newcastle has changed over years, but would we be fair to say that everybody in the city, the incorporated boundaries today, would be represented by the elements portrayed in the flag?
I hope they would, but maybe not. And if people don't recognize the outline of the founding settlement of their city, then that has failed. That's going to fail with everybody. That's the founding of the city, not the founding of the historic district. And as far as Fort Casimir is concerned, what happened with these symbols is that on the first go round, these guys gave us about 40 flags, but they thought they were designing for Newcastle County. And so they settled on castles and rooks, and that symbolism had been rejected in the branding guide. So they said, "Oh, okay, we'll take another shot at it." And I was trying to think, well, what's emblematic of Newcastle? What shape could we come up with? So I tossed the cupola at them and the shape of Fort Casimir, and so they ran with that. But I couldn't come up with any other all-encompassing symbol for Newcastle, which would be ideal. So anyway, back to the drawing board. Miss Alder mentioned the idea of the shield, the branding shield, and that's where I started. Just put that on there, and it's kind of the branding shield on a bed sheet, but at least it has more symbolism. It has the 4 different occupations of Newcastle in history, and so that's an idea. Go back to that.
The downside of that is it doesn't represent the native peoples who were here.
Well, yeah, and that's what happened in one of the flags, not this one necessarily, but one of the ones they put forward. One of the designers said, well, there weren't just 3 or 4 we're missing somebody here. So in this revision here, that's why you have those 5 cultures made in that star. And so that's there.
I don't know if there's some way to combine that idea, not necessarily the star, but perhaps some other symbol of the Lenape and the other peoples of this area with this shield. You know, I'm not a flag designer, but I'm just trying to think of things that might be recognizable. Because I think, don't the elementary school children learn about the Lenape and about symbols?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think when I talked about the branding guide with this flag expert who I've been working with, he said branding guides come and go, flags are forever. So he thought we needed to make sure we're getting something that we were going to love and keep forever and ever. All right, thank you very much for your input. Any further thoughts?
Mr. Smith, would you like to come back with a recommendation on what to do next on this topic?
Well, I could do that. I'll have to think about that. Maybe gin up, other ideas, but I'll see what we can come up with. I think NAVA is about done with this because they went through that whole first design phase with the castles, and they weren't very pleased when I told them we weren't Newcastle County and that they have to design again. I don't think they're going for it a third time.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody, let me know if you think there's any universal symbols for Newcastle, anything that you think would represent Newcastle well. But please don't get into, designing the flag. If I am going to go back to these guys, I like to give them something to work with rather than try to tell a designer how to design. And I'll follow up on the shield idea as Ms. Souter suggested, and we'll see where we go from here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please take a look at that video and the booklet that goes with it. The video is entertaining. And by the way, there's a guy kind of on the phone or recording during the video. There's a presenter, and then there's a guy on the phone on the box. And after the video, I signed up for the association, and in my membership application, I said, I'd be interested in working on a city flag. And within 24 hours, the secretary of the organization, who was the guy in the recording, gave me a call. So, all right.
And I want to thank Mr. This is a lot of hard work, and it'd be interesting to look at some of the other flags that cities have and some of the processes they've been through. I mean, they might have gone through 2,000 iterations and a whole big process, but this has been a lot of hard work because he's basically looked at probably 80 designs and from national experts.
Yeah. And in that booklet that I sent you the link to, they have before and after for some flags. And you can see they went through a long process to get to where they are. I know it's getting late here, so back to you, Linda.
All right, well, thank you. At this point, any other messages from council?
Motion to adjourn.
Sounds great. And all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Happy holidays.
Everybody enjoy their holidays. Bye now.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Same to you all.
Yes, we're done. What, was it long enough for you?
Done already?